like to share a story with you. I'm actually going to read what was written. It's a book about someone very dear to me, and I'm going to put it out there. Hopefully, it'll help some people. Maybe people can relate to it and just see that they're not alone in what they're dealing with. So I'm just going to read it. Letters to Dennis, a dedication of love by Bob Tussler. 40 years old, 6 years trained as a mental health therapist, and no way to prepare for what I was about to hear. You have a brain tumor. It's a glioblastoma multiforme stage 4, the most aggressive cancer there is. Doctors give you 4 to 6 months quality life. And this information was given to me by Dennis, my life partner of the last 9 years. I've decided to keep a journal of my experiences through this ordeal so that Dennis may be better able to understand why I'm acting the way I am, and so that others who read this will know that they have not been alone. I can't remember when this all started, but I do know things were changing around the time of my 40th birthday, September 10th, 1994. It was a fantastic birthday party. Dennis arranged the whole thing. He didn't miss a detail. I was picked up in a chauffeur-driven limousine, taken to a hotel where I thought I was to have dinner. We went into a banquet room where 35 of my friends were gathered putting on a mock funeral to mourn the passing of my youth. There was a casket in the middle of the room, surrounded by funeral flowers, and my cake was shaped like a gravestone. Everything was done with such detail. Little did I know at that time I would probably never see another birthday again. Dennis had arranged a room in the hotel for us. When we got upstairs, I became violently ill. The headaches started during the middle of October. Sometimes the headaches were so intense they prevented me from standing up straight. I didn't think much of it until I started taking aspirin every 4 hours. I still needed more by the time the second hour passed. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. And trusting my family physician, who was treating me for upper respiratory infection, I just kept taking decongestants and antibiotics as prescribed with no relief. My condition went from bad to worse, and since I have no memory of that time, I've asked for Dennis's help in recalling the days surrounding the diagnosis. Things originally began when we were driving in your car and we approached the traffic light turning red. While we were stopped at the light, you complained of being disoriented. I looked over at you and your head was twitching to the left and back to center. I asked if you were all right or if anything was wrong, and you told me you couldn't think or tell me what was happening. Shortly thereafter, the twitching stopped. We switched places so I could drive. You thought you might feel better if you ate something, so we stopped for a fast food burger. Afterwards, you seemed fine. Who would have known something was wrong? The way you eat, we just figured it was feeding time for the animals again. Before Dennis goes on, I would like to talk about the holidays. Thanksgiving and Christmas came and went without fanfare. I experienced no physical problems during the season. Thanksgiving was like it had been years before, simply an eating frenzy at your parents' house. Christmas time we celebrated at friend Norman's. The first time in 9 years we had no Christmas tree of our own, and for that I'm sorry. A good possibility that this was my last Christmas, and me celebrating with no tree. Remember our first year together? You went out and bought a Christmas tree while I was at work just to surprise me. When I came home from the work day, in the middle of the living room stood the most beautiful Christmas tree I'd ever seen. You standing next to it was the best present I could have ever received. Looking at you standing there was almost as beautiful as you and the duck line at Niagara Falls. This year, Christmas simply seemed to vanish and pass by just as another day of the week. The cruise we decided to take instead of exchanging gifts was somewhat of a mistake. I don't want to say we shouldn't have done it because any experience with you is a treasure memory. I mean, really, food, food, food everywhere turned out to be hot dogs, hamburgers, and chips. The only thing that made the midnight buffet spectacular was the time at which it took place. How much preparation can it possibly take to slice up six cantaloupe, couple of apples, fill the remainder of the plate with leftover Danish and finger sandwiches, and serve it up to a crowd without Kathy Lee? In the morning, in the evening, ain't we got fun? This chick leads a boring life. While we were on the cruise, the only physical problems I really experienced were occasional nausea and mild headaches. But I brushed some of it off to the location of our cabin. You may hear the thrusters while pulling in and out of port, and being on a ship for the first time in my life. When we returned from the cruise, still no sight of Kathy Lee, I felt empty. Like for some reason there should have been more to this experience. Perhaps my expectations were too high. Perhaps there just wasn't enough. Or perhaps something was wrong and we just didn't know what it was. Fears confirmed. January 10th, everything started. January 10th, Tuesday. You came home from work complaining of headaches. Before this, you had occasional headaches that we put off to you not wearing your glasses for reading. After all, boys seldom make passes at girls wearing glasses. As the evening progressed, you became sick as a dog. The headaches were intense. They would come on and you would have severe pain so bad you would crawl up on the sofa in a fetal position. Within a minute or two or so, they would subside. We agreed it was necessary to go to the hospital emergency room. Based on our past experiences at hospital emergency rooms, we decided it was necessary to eat something first. Out to a local restaurant to have some breakfast for dinner. Not 5 minutes after we ordered food, you said you were going to the restroom, and if you weren't out in 5 minutes, I should come in looking for you. 5 minutes passed, and I found you hovering over the sink in the bathroom. The headaches were now coming at regular intervals. Not to let breakfast go to waste, we returned to finish our food. Off to St. Joseph's Emergency. You were triaged for vitals and your medical history was taken. We were then told to have a seat in the waiting room as there were 52 people before you. So off to Memorial Hospital we went. Again you were triaged and had your vitals taken. There was no wait and you were taken back for evaluation within 3 minutes. Of course, insurance information had to be completed first. Can't be ill these days unless you have insurance. I sat in the waiting room and waited for what seemed to be all night. Sometime later, you came out and led me back to where you had been checked by the doctor. You told me the doctor had recommended a CAT scan of your head, but you wanted to discuss it with your family physician in the morning. Before we left, the doctor prescribed some Percocet, which we picked up on the way home. Got home around 11 p.m. You took Percocet and we went to bed. The headaches continued one right after the other, lasting only a minute before returning within 5. Around 1 a.m. you started to get nauseous. You vomited over the side of the bed. You made it to the bathroom and again vomited. Every 45 minutes you were up vomiting. Not a pretty sight. Bacon, eggs, home fries. No waitress but a speedy delivery. The next morning you called Dr. D. D is actually the initial of the great doctor. However, in my opinion, it could stand for other things better left as initials. The Dr. D, the great Dr. D, felt it unnecessary to have a CAT scan and thought it better to switch from antibiotics to antiviral medications instead. He stuck to his original diagnosis of upper respiratory something and now possible sinus infection. It's truly amazing how a man with a medical education is able to evaluate a person's condition without ever doing a single test, culture, or physical examination. Everything over the phone. Isn't the technological advancement of medicine wonderful? All day you slept. I figured it was because of the Percocet. Since you were never a druggie, I thought you might just be overly sensitive to the effect of the drug. I tried to arouse you at different times throughout the day. Sometimes you would continue to sleep. Sometimes you would talk to me in a groggy manner. Around 5 p.m. I decided I should try to wake you so you weren't up all night unable to sleep. You woke up as if you had had too much to drink. You were stumbling and had slurred speech, but I managed to get you to the couch. You laid down and soon enough fell asleep. Throughout the evening you were on the couch fast asleep. You hadn't been complaining of headaches, so I thought the sleep was doing you some good. You looked so peaceful I didn't want to disturb you. Midnight rolled around. It was time for bed, according to normal standards. Never again would we know the meaning of normal. Sorry. I couldn't wake you this time, so I picked you up, cradled you in my arms, and carried you to bed. Good night, sweet prince. I slept on the couch so I didn't disturb your sleep. In the morning, I woke to check on you. Sleep was still your main activity. However, the bed was drenched from one end to the other. During the night, you must have been so deep within the boundaries of sleep, you didn't realize you were relieving yourself. I called the great Dr. D to explain the situation, seeking some direction to protect your well-being. He, with all his worldly know-how, recommended I let you sleep it off, and I thought it necessary later in the day I should consider taking you back to the emergency room. I appreciate your advice, fuckhead. Marge will know. It's wonderful to have a friend like Marge. Anything you need, anytime, anyway, anyhow. Maybe being a nurse, she may have better insight. Most nurses haven't categorized themselves up there in the godlike status as most doctors have. Marge is definitely one of the still down-to-earth, in-touch ones. I beeped Marge and she returned my call. I explained everything in detail. Within minutes, she was at our side. When she arrived, you were coming around. Although disoriented, you knew who you were and where you were. Still as if you were drunk, though. We walked you up and down the block. I gave you a cold shower, dried you off, dressed you, and we walked you again. When you began complaining about headaches again, we drove you to St. Joseph's. Of course you were triaged again. They took you back into emergency room. Marge stayed to give the insurance information. They asked me to wait on the other side of the curtain while they checked you out and undressed you. When they finally allowed me in, which seemed like forever, you were out of it again. Basically, you were comatose. They were planning to do a CT scan. I was to wait in the waiting room with Marge, so we waited and waited forever and even longer. Marge had to see the remainder of her patients and close out her day. She left and planned to return around 6 p.m. On with the wait. Just before 6, you were brought back into emergency. They called in a neurosurgeon for consultation. While waiting for him, the emergency room doctor showed me the results of the CAT scan. Tumor. I could hear him telling me this from afar off in the distance. Was I still standing? I don't see anything around me anymore, except for the film in front of me with this dark spot in the middle. Marge, where are you? Somebody, anybody. Bob, help me. Oh God, I'm alone. Marge showed up moments later. She always had good timing. Dr. William, the neurosurgeon, came in. He explained to both of us that you had a mass located in the right frontal portion of your brain. He didn't think it was cancerous, however, it had to be removed. It possibly could also be toxoplasmosis, AIDS-related abscess. HIV tests would have to be run. He showed us, using me as a model, where the tumor was located. Pushing back my hat, he indicated the location. Don't touch my hair. Nobody touches my hair. I'm losing my mind. Somebody pinch me. Wake me up. Please let this be a dream.